December 17th, 1944, 0640 hours. Ardennes Forest, Belgium. Temperature, minus 12 degrees Celsius. Obergefreiter Hans Mueller, 24 years old, from Dresden. Crouched in frozen foxhole, fingers numb, writing words in his diary that would haunt him for the rest of his life. The Americans are not like the Russians. Their artillery is something else entirely. It is not the volume of fire, though that is terrible enough. It is the speed. It is the accuracy. It is the knowledge that you have no time to react. One moment there is silence. The next moment the world explodes. There is no warning, no chance to take cover, no possibility of survival, except pure luck. Through dense fog that morning, Mueller had witnessed something that shattered every assumption German soldiers held about American military capability. His battalion, 3rd Battalion, 1st SS Panzer Regiment, part of 6th SS Panzer Army, had just launched Hitler's final gamble in the West, Operation Walk am Rhein. Watch on the Rhine. The offensive designed to split Allied armies, capture Antwerp, force negotiated peace. They'd achieved complete surprise against thinly held American positions. 8-Corps sector, defended primarily by inexperienced divisions and exhausted units sent to quiet sector for rest. Victory seemed within reach. Roads to Meuse River appeared open. Then American artillery found them. What Mueller did not know, what no German soldier advancing through those snow-covered forests could have known, was that they were about to encounter the most lethal artillery system ever deployed in warfare. A system so advanced, so devastating, so precisely coordinated that it would break the back of Germany's last offensive and reveal the true depth of American military superiority. Mueller's battalion had started offensive at 0530 hours that morning with 723 men. By 0800 hours, 2.5 hours later, 412 men were dead, wounded, or missing. American artillery had accounted for approximately 320 of those casualties. Battalion had ceased to exist as effective fighting force before ever engaging American infantry in direct combat. This pattern would repeat across entire Ardennes front. German formations that had achieved tactical surprise, penetrated American lines, captured American positions, all found themselves destroyed by weapon system they could neither counter nor comprehend. The collapse had begun long before Battle of the Bulge. Throughout 1943 and 1944, German veterans transferred from Eastern Front to face American forces in Italy, France, and Low Countries carried with them assumptions forged in desperate battles against Soviet artillery. They had learned to survive Russian bombardments through hard-won experience. Lessons written in blood across steppes of Ukraine, forests of Belarus, ruins of Stalingrad. Soviet artillery patterns, German tactical observations, 1941 to 1944. Russians would fire ranging shots, typically 2 to 4 individual shells, giving German troops precious 15 to 30 seconds to seek cover before main barrage arrived. This warning, though brief, meant difference between survival and death for soldiers who had learned to react instantly. Shells would arrive in predictable patterns. Soviet doctrine emphasized firing by battery, for 6 guns, rather than coordinating multiple batteries. Experienced German soldiers learned to identify dead zones between impact areas where survival odds increased dramatically. Fire direction was often slow. Soviet forward observers radioed coordinates to battery commanders, who calculated firing solutions, transmitted data to guns, which then prepared to fire. Process typically took 10 to 15 minutes from observation to impact, sometimes longer if communication difficulties arose. Counter-battery fire could suppress Soviet guns before they inflicted catastrophic damage. German artillery doctrine emphasized rapid counter-battery response. Locate Soviet guns through flash spotting or sound ranging. Calculate firing solution. Destroy guns before they could displace. System worked reasonably well against Soviet artillery, which often lacked mobility to rapidly change positions. Soviet ammunition expenditure, while enormous by German standards, followed predictable patterns. Intensive preparatory bombardments before attacks, harassing fire at regular intervals. German troops learned these rhythms, adjusted behavior accordingly. Gefreiter Ernst Kohler, veteran of Kursk, transferred to Italy October 1943, described Soviet artillery in letter home. The Russians throw shells at us like stones, thousands upon thousands, but we have learned to survive. When we hear the first shells landing, the ranging shots, we count to 10 and dive for cover. The main barrage follows predictable pattern. We wait in our holes. When it lifts, we emerge and prepare for their infantry assault. Casualties are heavy, yes, but survivable if you know the patterns. This was artillery as German soldiers understood it. powerful, deadly, but ultimately predictable. A weapon that could be survived through experience, discipline, quick reaction. The Americans were different. Terrifyingly different. Obergefreiter Otto Schmidt, veteran of 2 years on Eastern Front, 22nd Panzer Division, survivor of Stalingrad encirclement, evacuated by air January 1943, transferred to Afrika Korps March 1943, captured Tunisia May 1943, would later describe his first encounter with American artillery in post-war interview conducted in 1952. We had taken position in Wadi north of Tunis. Good cover, we thought. Steep walls, concealment from aerial observation, multiple exits for rapid withdrawal if needed. The Russians would have needed an hour to find us, and another hour to range their guns. We felt safe enough to heat our morning coffee. We'd been moving all night. Were exhausted, needed hot food before continuing withdrawal toward Bizerta. Then we saw it, a small aircraft no bigger than reconnaissance plane, puttering overhead at perhaps 500 meters altitude. Fabric wings, tiny engine, barely faster than car on highway. We barely paid attention. Such aircraft had no weapons. We assumed it was doing photography, perhaps mapping our positions for future airstrike. We watched it circle twice. Pilot was clearly marking our position. We began discussing whether to displace immediately or finish our coffee and move in 10 minutes. Most of us had not eaten hot food in 3 days. 3 minutes later, without warning, without ranging shots, without any indication whatsoever, the entire wadi erupted. Not a single shell, not ranging fire. Dozens of shells landing simultaneously, not in sequence. Air bursts above us, fragments sweeping down into wadi. Ground bursts among us, killing men in foxholes we thought were safe. The walls of wadi that we thought would protect us reflected blast waves back and forth, magnifying effect. In 30 seconds, my company ceased to exist as fighting unit. I was one of 11 survivors from 123 men. 11. The rest dead, dying or so badly wounded they could not move. The aircraft was still overhead, circling, watching. I understood then. Pilot had called the artillery. Somehow, impossibly, shells had arrived within 3 minutes of spotting us. No ranging fire. Perfect accuracy. Overwhelming volume. We 11 survivors surrendered that afternoon. What else could we do? We had no officers, no weapons, no organization. We walked toward American lines with white flags, grateful to be alive. The aircraft Schmidt had seen was L for Grasshopper, the American forward observer's flying platform. Essentially militarized Piper J, 3 Cub civilian aircraft, modified with transparent panels in fuselage floor for observation, radio equipment for communication with artillery. Specifications: maximum speed 85 miles per hour. Service ceiling 9,300 feet. Range 190 miles. Crew: 2, pilot and artillery observer. Cost: approximately $2,500 per aircraft. The United States produced over 5,600 L for Grasshoppers during the war. These unassuming Piper Cubs will become most feared aircraft in German military. Not for any weapons they carried. They were unarmed. But for what followed their appearance. German soldiers learned a bitter truth. When you saw a Grasshopper overhead, you had minutes, perhaps only seconds, before American artillery turned your position into killing ground. Unteroffizier Klaus Richter, captured in Normandy, July 1944, described Grasshopper psychology in POW interrogation. We call them Toad Saddler, Death Eagles. Ironic name for such small, slow aircraft. But we fear them more than fighter bombers. Fighter bomber might strafe you, bomb you, but then it was gone. Grasshopper would circle overhead, watching, and you knew, that artillery was coming. You could not hide. You could not run fast enough. You could only wait and hope shells would land somewhere else. Usually they did not. Usually you died. Leutnant Friedrich Bauer, 31 years old from Munich, artillery officer with 21st Panzer Division, veteran of Eastern Front who had coordinated counter-battery fire against Soviet artillery in 1942 to 1943, transferred to Italy October 1943, documented his astonishment in letters discovered decades later in German military archives, declassified in 1978. I studied American artillery procedures from captured documents. Initially, I believed these documents were deception, propaganda designed to intimidate. No artillery system could perform as described. The coordination required would be impossible with existing technology and communications. Consider what they claimed: forward observer radio's coordinates. Within 3 minutes, shells land on target from multiple batteries located at different distances, firing different calibers, all coordinated to impact simultaneously. This requires calculating firing solutions for perhaps dozens of guns, each at different range and azimuth, then transmitting fire commands, then executing fire, all in less time than it takes to drink a cup of coffee. Impossible. Or so I thought. Then I witnessed it myself. Near Salerno, September 1943. American Grasshopper appeared over our positions late afternoon. We tracked it, preparing to displace our guns as standard procedure. We'd learned in Russia to move immediately when spotted by aircraft. Our guns were already hitched to prime movers, ready to displace within 10 minutes. Before we could move, before we had even computed firing data for counter-battery fire, American shells were landing on our position. Not random fire, not area saturation. Precise fire on each gun position. Each of our 6 guns received approximately 10 shells within 30 seconds. Concentrated, accurate, devastating. Gun number 3 took direct hit. Destroyed. Crew killed instantly. Gun number 5 disabled by near miss. Trail broken. Gun number 1 could not displace. Prime mover destroyed. We abandoned remaining guns and withdrew on foot, carrying wounded. They had calculated firing solutions, coordinated multiple batteries at different ranges, transmitted fire commands, and delivered simultaneous fire in less time than it took our own forward observers to radio map coordinates to our fire direction center. I still did not believe it was possible. I assumed we'd been unlucky, perhaps spotted by previous reconnaissance. Coordinates already calculated. Then it happened again. And again. Every time American aircraft spotted our positions, artillery fire arrived within 3 to 5 minutes. Every time. Not occasionally. Every time. At some point, you must accept evidence of your own eyes. Americans had developed artillery system that could perform what should be impossible. The secret to American artillery superiority lay not in single innovation, but in comprehensive system that integrated technology, training, and industrial capacity at level Germany could never match. It was system that transformed artillery from supporting weapon into dominant force on battlefield. System that made American infantry formations more lethal than German panzer divisions. System that broke German offensive capability and revealed stark truth. Germany was fighting 20th century war with 19th century methods. Foundation was fire direction center, concept that revolutionized artillery employment. German system, as practiced throughout World War II. Each artillery battery calculated firing solutions individually. Battery commander received target coordinates from forward observer, calculated range and azimuth using maps and firing tables, computed corrections for weather and other variables, issued fire commands to guns. Coordination between batteries required extensive communication. If battalion commander wanted 2 batteries firing on same target, he transmitted orders separately to each battery. Each battery then calculated its own firing solution independently. Multiple batteries firing on same target did so sequentially, not simultaneously. Battery A fires, then Battery B fires, then Battery C fires. This was necessary because each battery calculated firing solutions independently and fire when ready, rather than coordinating for simultaneous impact. Counter-battery fire required separate calculations for each enemy gun position. Locate enemy gun through flash spotting or sound ranging. Calculate range and azimuth to that specific gun. Compute firing solution. Engage. To engage multiple enemy guns require repeating entire process for each target. This system worked adequately when firing on stationary targets with ample time for calculation. It failed completely when attempting to engage mobile targets, when trying to coordinate fire from multiple batteries, when speed of response was critical. American system, developed late 1930s, refined throughout World War II. All data fed to Central Fire Direction Center, FDC. Battalion FDC received target coordinates from forward observer, immediately computed firing solutions for all battalion guns. Typically 12 guns and 3 batteries of 4 guns each, transmitted fire commands simultaneously to all batteries. FDC could coordinate fire from dozens of batteries simultaneously. Division Artillery FDC could coordinate fire from 48 guns for battalions of 12 guns each. Corps Artillery FDC could coordinate fire from hundreds of guns across multiple divisions. Pre-computed firing tables allowed rapid calculation. FDC personnel looked up solution in tables rather than computing from first principles. What German artillery officer might calculate in 10 minutes, American FDC computed in 30 seconds. Single forward observer could call fire from entire corps artillery. lieutenant with radio could coordinate fire from 200-plus guns within minutes. This represented revolutionary change in how artillery supported infantry operations. Hauptmann Werner Hoffmann, mathematics professor, University of Heidelberg, conscripted in 1940, assigned Wehrmacht artillery as fire direction specialist due to mathematical expertise, examined captured American equipment and documents France, September 1944. His analysis, preserved in German military records. I have spent 3 days studying captured American fire direction equipment and documents. I am forced to conclude that Americans have systematized artillery employment in ways we never attempted. Their firing tables are extraordinary. These tables represent literally years of computational work. I estimate 50,000 to 100,000 hours on mechanical calculators. They have computed solutions for every variable we might encounter in field. Wind speed from 0 to 40 meters per second, temperature from minus 40 degrees to plus 40 degrees Celsius, barometric pressure variations, altitude differences from minus 500 to plus 3,000 meters, barrel wear from 0 to 5,000 rounds, propellant temperature variations, even rotation of Earth, Coriolis effect at different latitudes. Our own firing tables are crude by comparison. We provide basic range/elevation tables and expect artillery officers to compute corrections manually using slide rules and logarithm tables. This requires mathematical skill and experience. Our best artillery officers can compute accurate firing solution in 8 to 10 minutes. Average artillery officer requires 15 to 20 minutes. Americans have done the mathematics in advance. In the field, they simply look up the answer in tables. Their FDC personnel, who need not be highly skilled mathematicians, can determine accurate firing solution in less than 1 minute. This represents profound difference in philosophy. We emphasize individual skill and initiative. They emphasize systematic process that produces consistent results regardless of individual skill. The system is brilliant in its efficiency and scalability. American artillery is not better because their soldiers are better trained or more skilled, though training is good. American artillery is better because they have created a system that allows average soldiers to achieve results that will require exceptional skill in our system. But tables alone could not explain American artillery's devastating effectiveness. The true revolution was time on target. Before we continue with how time-on-target coordination shattered German formations in seconds, and why proximity fuses convinced Wehrmacht soldiers they were fighting weapon system from the future, if you're fascinated by these stories of systematic military superiority that defeated tactical excellence through industrial organization, subscribe and hit the notification bell. We publish deeply researched military history documentaries every week that bring you the technological revolutions that changed warfare forever. Now, back to 1944, and the artillery system that broke the Wehrmacht in the West. Time on target, universally known as TOT. Coordinated artillery fire, so that shells from multiple batteries fired at different times based on their distance from target arrived simultaneously within 3-second window. The mathematics were complex, but the concept was simple. Battery A, located 12 kilometers from target, fires at T-minus 30 seconds. Battery B, located 10 kilometers from target, fires at T-minus 24 seconds. Battery C, located 15 kilometers from target, fires at T-minus 38 seconds. All shells arrive at target at time T, detonating within same 3-second window. The effect was catastrophic beyond anything conventional artillery could achieve. German soldiers experienced no warning. Unlike conventional artillery barrage that began with ranging shots or gradual buildup of fire, TOT barrage appeared instantaneously. One moment, complete silence. Next moment, dozens or hundreds of shells detonating simultaneously. No ranging shots. Traditional artillery fired 2 to 4 ranging shots to correct aim before firing for effect. These ranging shots gave defending troops 15 to 30 seconds warning to seek cover. TOT eliminated ranging shots entirely through pre-computed accuracy. No gradual buildup of fire. Conventional barrage started light, increased in intensity as more guns joined. This allowed troops to assess danger, seek better cover, possibly withdraw from beaten zone. TOT delivered maximum intensity from first instant. Troops in the open, whose survival against conventional artillery depended on dropping prone at first explosion, had no time to react. German tactical doctrine taught soldiers to drop flat immediately upon hearing first shell. This worked against conventional artillery because first shells were usually ranging shots and main barrage took 10 to 30 seconds to develop. Against TOT, first shells were the main barrage. No time to react. Studies conducted by U.S. Army Operational Research Group, 1945. 66% of artillery casualties occurred in first 10 seconds of barrage. This statistic applied to conventional artillery. It underestimated TOT effectiveness because TOT delivered all its lethality in first 3 seconds. Troops undercover in foxholes, trenches, or buildings suffered 40% fewer casualties than troops in open during conventional barrage. Against TOT, troops undercover suffered only 15% fewer casualties because surprise eliminated ability to seek better cover. Time on target maximized casualties by eliminating warning. Psychological studies of combat survivors revealed that anticipation, knowing attack was coming and having time to prepare, significantly improved survival odds through better defensive reactions. TOT eliminated anticipation entirely. Mathematical modeling by Operational Research Group. Conventional barrage lasting 3 minutes, firing 100 shells, caused estimated 30 casualties among company of 150 men in open terrain. TOT barrage firing same 100 shells, all arriving within 3 seconds, caused estimated 68 casualties among same company in same terrain. More than double effectiveness from same ammunition expenditure, purely through improved coordination. Stabsfeldwebel Kurt Zimmerman, 32 years old from Hamburg, 15-year Wehrmacht veteran, decorated with Iron Cross first and second class for service in Poland, France, and Russia, survived multiple TOT strikes during Battle of the Bulge. His diary, discovered by American forces in captured command post near St. Vith, December 28, 1944, provides detailed account written by a professional soldier who understood artillery. December 19, 1944. Our regiment received orders to attack American positions at crossroads 3 kilometers west of our current location. Intelligence reported only company strength force, possibly less. Easy objective. We advanced in column formation along forest trail. Standard movement for approach march when enemy contact unlikely. 650 men in column. Weather, cold, foggy, visibility poor. We felt safe from air observation. At 1,040 hours, we exited forest into open ground. Objective visible 800 meters distant. Still no enemy fire. Commander ordered deployment from column into attack formation. At 1,042 hours, precisely 10:42, I checked my watch afterward. World ended. It is not artillery as we understand it. It is something new, something we have no doctrine for, no defense against. You hear nothing. No whistling of incoming shells. No preliminary impacts. No warning whatsoever. Then world ends. I cannot adequately describe it. Imagine every shell arriving in same second. Not rapid succession. Not almost simultaneous. Literally same second. Impossible to distinguish individual explosions. Just single overwhelming crack as dozens or hundreds of shells detonate as one. Air bursts kill men who would survive ground bursts. Ground bursts kill men who would survive air bursts. Some shells explode in air, fragments sweeping horizontally. Other shells explode on ground, fragments sweeping up and out. There is no safe place except deep underground, and we had no bunkers. There is no time to dive for cover. No time to reach foxhole, even if you are standing next to one. No time even to drop flat. You are simply alive one moment and wounded or dead the next. The barrage lasted perhaps 60 seconds. When it ended, when my ears stopped ringing enough to hear, I stood up. I was untouched. Pure luck. Around me, bodies. Parts of bodies. Wounded men screaming. Others making no sound at all. Of 650 men in regiment, perhaps 200 were still standing. Perhaps 150 of those were wounded. Our attack was finished before it began. We withdrew into forest, carrying wounded who could not walk. Left many dead where they fell. Had no choice. That evening, commander received orders to attack again next morning. Officers protested. Regiment no longer existed as effective force. We had perhaps 180 men still capable of fighting. Orders were repeated. We would attack. We attacked at dawn December 20th. Same thing happened. We advanced into open ground. American artillery found us. This time I was wounded, shrapnel in left leg and shoulder. Not serious enough for evacuation. Serious enough to hurt terribly. That attack also failed. 30 more dead. 60 more wounded. I have fought on Eastern Front for 2 years. I have survived Soviet artillery at Kursk, during Bagration offensive, during retreat through Ukraine. Soviet artillery was terrible. Thousands of guns firing hundreds of thousands of shells. But you could survive Soviet artillery if you were quick, if you were lucky, if you knew what you were doing. This American artillery is different. There is no defense except staying in deep bunker and praying they don't know where you are. Once they find you, once you hear that simultaneous crash of shells arriving together, you simply hope you survive. Hope is all you have. Zimmerman survived war, emigrated to United States 1956. Died 1987, Chicago, Illinois. His diary was donated to U.S. Army Military History Institute by his widow. Speed of American artillery response shocked German commanders who were accustomed to artillery taking 8 to 15 minutes to respond to fire requests. German artillery, considered among the world's best before encountering Americans, could deliver fire in 8 to 10 minutes under ideal conditions. Good weather, good communications, stationary target, ample ammunition, experienced crews. Required extensive coordination between forward observers and fire direction. German forward observers, typically artillery officers, had to locate target 1 to 2 minutes, determine grid coordinates from map 1 to 2 minutes, radio coordinates to battery 1 to 2 minutes, accounting for message traffic and possible communication difficulties, battery calculate firing solution 3 to 5 minutes, battery prepare guns and fire 1 to 2 minutes. Total time 7 to 13 minutes typical. Sometimes much longer if communications degraded, if battery needed to displace from previous position, if ammunition needed to be brought forward. Communication often degraded by poor radio equipment. German Army entered war with excellent radio communications by 1940 standards. By 1944, German radios were obsolete, plagued by short range, typically 3 to 5 kilometers for man-portable sets, AM, amplitude modulation, technology susceptible to interference-limited frequencies, causing congestion unreliable under battlefield conditions, weather, terrain, electronic warfare. Approval process for corps artillery could take hours. German artillery doctrine maintained rigid hierarchy. Battalion forward observer could call fire from battalion guns only. To get fire from regimental artillery required approval from regimental commander. To get fire from division artillery required approval from division artillery commander. To get fire from corps artillery required approval from corps artillery commander. This made sense for ammunition conservation when shells were scarce and requests needed prioritization. Made no sense when tactical situation required immediate fire. Example from Lieutenant Wilhelm Decker Diary, Normandy, July 1944. 0730. Spotted American tank concentration. Approximately 20 tanks. 2 kilometers from our position. Perfect target for corps artillery. Radioed request a battalion. 0745. Battalion forwarded request a regiment. 0810. Regiment forwarded request a division. 0835. Division forwarded request corps. 0920. Corps approved fire mission. 0935. Corps artillery ready to fire. 0940. American tanks had already moved. Position empty. Fire mission canceled. Our artillery system is paralyzing itself through bureaucracy. Americans would have engaged those tanks within minutes of spotting them. Routinely delivered accurate fire in 3 minutes. Often faster. Record response time. 60 seconds from initial call for fire to shells landing on target. This was exceptional but not unique. Several instances recorded throughout campaign. Every infantry battalion had multiple radio-equipped forward observers. Typically 6 to 10 forward observer teams per battalion, each with radio. This redundancy meant even heavy casualties could not silence artillery support. Single lieutenant could coordinate fire from dozens of batteries without seeking higher approval. This represented revolutionary change in artillery doctrine. American system emphasized responsive fire support over ammunition conservation, trusting that industrial capacity will provide sufficient ammunition. Artillery pieces themselves demonstrated American industrial superiority in ways German soldiers and commanders found incomprehensible. Contrast in mobility was stark and ultimately decisive. German artillery remained predominantly horse-drawn throughout war. Despite Nazi propaganda showing mechanized panzer divisions, approximately 80% of Wehrmacht motor power relied on horses for transport. Germany started World War II with 514,000 horses, September 1939. This represented mobilization of nearly entire German horse population, plus horses seized from occupied Czechoslovakia and Poland. Gefreiter Paul Richter, assigned to German Artillery Battery, 352nd Infantry Division, Normandy, June-July 1944. Kept detailed diary that survived war. Captured July 28, 1944. Diary confiscated. Preserved in U.S. Army records. June 9, 1944. We watched American artillery displaced during battle yesterday. Extraordinary. They were firing on our infantry positions. We located them through flash spotting. For guns, approximately 4 kilometers from our position. We prepared counter-battery fire. Before we could fire, trucks appeared. Americans hitched their guns to trucks and departed. Entire battery displaced in approximately 20 minutes. We timed it. We fired our counter-battery mission at empty position. Wasted 36 precious shells. June 12th. Same thing happened again. Spotted American battery. Prepared to engage. They displaced before we could fire. This is pattern. They displaced constantly, making counter-battery fire nearly impossible. June 15th. Our battery received orders to displace. We were under American artillery fire, ranging shots landing near our position. Commander ordered immediate displacement. We required 2 hours to displace. First, unhitch guns from prime movers. Our guns still use horses, though some batteries have been re-equipped with tractors. Then limber guns, lift trail, attached to tow hook, secure. Then hitch horses. 6 horses per gun, must be harnessed correctly or gun cannot be towed safely. Then move slowly, carefully, because horses pulling heavy load cannot move quickly. Then unlimber at new position. Then dig guns in. Then register guns on new azimuth. While we were displacing, American artillery found us. Trucks and horse teams are conspicuous targets. We lost 1 gun destroyed by direct hit. 4 horses killed, 3 wounded, destroyed by our own veterinarian. 2 badly injured to recover. 7 men killed, 12 wounded. This mobility difference is killing us. June 23rd. We attempted to displace under fire again. Conditions: wet, muddy. Horses could barely pull guns through mud. 1 gun became stuck. We had to abandon it. No time to dig it out while American shells landing. Drivers shot his horses. Could not abandon them alive to suffer. American artillery displaced in same muddy conditions within 20 minutes. Their trucks simply drove through mud that stopped our horses. July 14th. We received 4 replacement horses. Not enough. We need 24 horses for full battery for guns. Currently operating with 16 horses, meaning guns must be moved 1 or 2 at a time. This takes hours. Americans would set up at new position and be ready to fire again before we had finished moving. We are fighting 19th century war with horses against enemy fighting 20th century war with trucks. Outcome is inevitable. We will lose. Richter survived war. Emigrated to United States 1951. Worked as translator for U.S. Army intelligence, helping analyze captured German documents. Died 1979, Arlington, Virginia. American 155mm howitzers provided even more devastating fire support than divisional 105mm guns. Gun itself was triumph of engineering. Design late 1930s. Prototype testing 1938 to 1940. Standardized May 1941. Combined range, accuracy, and reliability. 10,300 units produced during war. Gun could be towed at highway speeds by truck or half-track, allowing rapid displacement despite heavy weight. Hydraulic recoil system absorbed firing shock, protecting carriage and allowing accurate follow-up shots. Split trail design provided stable firing platform. Rate of fire was impressive for such heavy gun. Well-trained crew could load, aim, and fire every 15 seconds. This meant that 4-gun battery could fire 16 shells per minute, 256 kilograms of high explosive per minute. Sustained for just 5 minutes, single battery delivered 80 shells, over 3 tons of high explosive. German equivalent, SFH-18 150mm howitzer. Fired similar weight shell but at slower rate, 2 to 3 rounds per minute maximum. More critically, German 150mm was horse-drawn, requiring hours to displace. American 155mm displaced in 30 minutes. Lieutenant Joachim Weber, forward observer with 352nd Infantry Division, Normandy Campaign. June-July 1944, documented his frustration in diary, recovered from his body after he was killed by American artillery July 15, 1944. June 14, 1944, 0915 hours. Spotted American tank concentration through binoculars. Approximately 20 tanks. 2 kilometers from our position, assembling an open field. Perfect target for corps artillery. Our division artillery could not engage Insufficient range, insufficient ammunition. We have been restricted to 5 shells per gun per day. Radioed request to battalion headquarters for Corps artillery support. Request acknowledged. 1,030 hours. Battalion headquarters confirmed request forwarded to regiment. 1,145 hours. Regiment confirmed request forwarded to division. 1,315 hours. Division confirmed request forwarded to Corps. 1,330 hours. Corps headquarters requested additional information. Clarified that tanks were still in position. Emphasized time sensitivity. Tanks would not remain static indefinitely. 1,420 hours. Corps approved fire mission. Corps artillery battalion designated to fire. 1,435 hours. Corps artillery battalion radio confirmation. Calculating firing solution. Estimated 20 minutes until ready to fire. 1,455 hours. Ready to fire. Requested final confirmation that target still in position. Target had moved. American tanks had already departed, presumably the staging area for upcoming attack. Position empty. Fire mission canceled. 2.5 hours from spotting target to being ready to fire. By then, target gone. American artillery would have engaged those tanks within 3 to 5 minutes of spotting them. Our artillery system is paralyzing itself through bureaucracy. We have guns. We have trained crews. We lack system that allows rapid response. Americans have that system. This more than any other factor is why they are winning. Weber's diary provides painful illustration of German artillery's systemic failure. Guns, ammunition, and crews were adequate. System for employing them was obsolete. Technical sophistication of American artillery extended beyond organization and doctrine to ammunition itself. While Germany struggled with propellant shortages and inconsistent shell production quality, American industry delivered ammunition in seemingly unlimited quantities manufactured to precise specifications that ensure consistent performance. More significantly, Americans deployed variable time fuse, VT fuse, technological marvel that would prove decisive in every theater where employed. Development required solving numerous technical problems. Vacuum tubes in the 1940s were fragile, designed for radio sets, not artillery shells. Standard vacuum tubes shattered instantly under firing acceleration. Engineers developed ruggedized tubes using innovative construction techniques. Battery had provided power but survived firing shock. Standard batteries failed. Engineers developed special battery designs using new materials. Safety mechanisms had to be foolproof. Premature detonation could destroy gun and crew. Fuse had to remain inert until shell had traveled at least 400 meters from gun, then arm automatically. Development timeline. 1940. Initial concept proposed by British scientists, shared with Americans 1941. Development program began under National Defense Research Committee 1942. First successful test conducted in 1943. Mass production began. Over 1 million fuses produced by war's end. VT fuse operational history. First combat use. USS Helena, January 5, 1943. Ship's 5-inch guns using VT fuse shells shot down Japanese dive bomber off Guadalcanal with only 2 to 3 salvos. Conventional fuses would have required 10 to 20 salvos for same result. Throughout 1943 to 1944. Proved devastatingly effective in naval anti-aircraft operations. VT fuses increased probability of hitting aircraft by a factor of 3 to 4 compared to conventional fuses. Against V1 flying bombs over England, summer 1944 VT. Fuses destroyed 79% of V1s engaged, compared to approximately 25% success rate with conventional fuses. Single technological innovation multiplied anti-aircraft effectiveness by a factor of 3. However, concerns about technology falling into German hands prevented its use in ground artillery over Europe until December 1944. Fear was that Germans would recover unexploded shells, reverse engineer technology, develop countermeasures, or their own version. Security restrictions were severe. VD fuses could not be fired over German-held territory where shells might be recovered. Initial use restricted to naval operations. Shells falling into ocean could not be recovered. Use over England against V1s permitted because V1s were targeting England. Duds would fall in British-controlled territory. Ground use over Europe initially prohibited despite repeated requests from field commanders. General Dwight D. Eisenhower personally requested permission to employ VT fuses during Battle of the Bulge. Eisenhower's argument message to Pentagon, December 18, 1944. German offensive represented crisis that justified security risk. Stopping offensive took priority over protecting technological secrets. VD fuses would be devastatingly effective against German troops attacking in open terrain, exactly the tactical situation battle the Bulge created. Americans controlled most battlefield. Chance of Germans recovering unexploded VD fuse shells was minimal. Even if Germans recovered and reverse-engineered fuses, their industrial capacity could not produce them in militarily significant quantities. German vacuum tube industry was primitive by American standards. German precision manufacturing had degraded under Allied bombing. War was nearly over. Whatever Germans learned from captured fuses could not significantly affect outcome. Pentagon initially refused authorization despite Eisenhower's arguments. Concerns about technology security overrode tactical considerations. Eisenhower protested vehemently. Sent second message, December 19th, arguing that American soldiers were dying because Pentagon prioritized technological secrets over tactical effectiveness. Message was blunt to point of insubordination. VT fuses were 3 to 4 times more effective than conventional time fuses against aircraft targets. Against V-1 flying bombs, VD fuses destroyed 79% of all V-1s engaged, compared to 24% with conventional fuses. Lethal fragment area, 3,000 square feet for VD fuse versus 60 square feet for conventional fuse. This enormous difference derived from optimal burst height. VT fuse detonated at 10 to 20 meters altitude automatically. Conventional fuse had to be set manually before firing. Errors in calculation meant shell might burst too high, fragments dispersed over wide area with low density, or too low, fragments absorbed by ground. Some estimates suggested VT fuses increased artillery effectiveness by 200 to 700% depending on target type and terrain. Against ground targets, most lethal against troops in open terrain or in shallow field fortifications. Troops who had learned to survive conventional artillery by seeking any depression in ground discovered VT fuses negated such cover completely. Conventional artillery shells with impact fuses detonated on contact with ground, sending fragments outward horizontally. Fragments traveled in cone-shaped pattern radiating from impact point. Troops prone in shallow depression or behind slight rise were protected. VT fuses detonated 10 to 20 meters above ground, sending fragments downward at steep angles. Fragments fell like deadly rain. Troops prone in shallow holes offered no protection. Fragments struck from above, penetrating helmets, backs, shoulders. Only deep trenches or bunkers with overhead cover provided protection. German troops in Ardennes lacked such fortifications. They were attacking, advancing through open terrain, forest trails, exposed roads. Obergefreiter Hans Mueller, whose diary opened this account, survived VT fuse barrage December 23, 1944, and recorded experience that night. We had learned on Eastern Front to go flat at first explosion. This was survival instinct drilled into us through experience. Even shallow depressions offer protection from fragments traveling horizontally. Foxhole provided good protection. Low ground ditch, shell crater, all offered cover that increased survival odds. But these shells, these demon shells as we now call them, exploded above us. Not on ground, not on impact, in air, perhaps 15 to 20 meters above ground. Fragments came down like rain. Steel rain. Men in foxholes, men who should have been protected, were killed by fragments that fell vertically into their holes. I watched Gefreiter Koch die. He had dived into shallow trench. Good cover against normal artillery. Shell exploded directly above him. Fragments fell straight down. Koch was killed instantly, still lying in trench that should have saved him. There was no defense except deep bunkers, and we had no time to dig deep bunkers. We were attacking, advancing through enemy territory. We had no prepared positions, no overhead cover, no protection. We simply died, or survived by pure luck, being in a small area where fragments happened not to fall. That evening, officers ordered us to dig deep foxholes with overhead cover. We worked all night, digging, cutting logs for overhead cover, placing dirt on top of logs. Exhausting work in frozen ground. Next morning, American artillery found us again. Our overhead cover saved us. Shells exploded above us. Fragments struck overhead cover. We survived. But now we cannot attack. We cannot leave our holes. Moving in open under artillery fire with these new fuses meant certain death. Our offensive had stopped, not because Americans defeated us in battle, because their artillery made movement impossible. Lieutenant Werner Vogel, German artillery officer, 276th Infantry Division, Normandy Campaign, documented ammunition crisis in War Diary. June 18, 1944. Received ammunition allocation for week. 50 shells per gun. Total for our battery. For guns, 200 shells for entire week. These 200 shells must support infantry regiment of approximately 2,000 men facing continuous American attacks. I am required to justify each fire mission to battalion commander, explaining in writing why this particular target merits expenditure of irreplaceable ammunition. Today's allocation. Approved to fire 8 shells in support of counterattack by 3rd Battalion. Attack failed. Americans repulsed our infantry with artillery fire. Americans fired what sounded like hundreds of shells, possibly thousands. We fired 8 shells total. June 20th. Requested permission to engage American tank concentration. Request denied. Insufficient ammunition. Division artillery commander stated that tanks were not high-value enough target to justify ammunition expenditure. Tanks destroyed our 3rd Company position later that day. 60 men killed or captured. If we had engaged tanks with artillery, attack might have been disrupted. June 25th. Our ammunition stock's exhausted. No shells remaining. We have become artillery battery that cannot fire. Crews are helping infantry dig positions. Guns are in place but useless without ammunition. Requested emergency resupply. Told that new allocation would arrive in 3 to 4 days. Meanwhile, American artillery fires thousands of shells daily with no apparent concern for conservation. We can hear constant rumble of their guns. We count explosions, 100 per hour, every hour, day and night. We are fighting poor man's war against rich man's enemy. They can afford to fire 100 shells where we fire 1. They can afford to engage targets of opportunity. They can afford to fire harassing missions just to keep us from sleeping. They can afford to blast every suspected position with dozens of shells just to be certain. We cannot afford any of this. We ration shells the way starving men ration food. And like starving men, we grow weaker each day while our enemy grows stronger. Vogel survived war. Captured July 31st, 1944. Spent remainder of war in POW camp, Louisiana. Emigrated to Canada in 1950. Died 2002, Toronto. His diary. Donated to Canadian War Museum by his family. Provides heartbreaking illustration of German artillery's ammunition crisis. Oberstleutnant Heinrich Mueller, whose infantry regiment had been destroyed at St. Lo 6 months earlier, reformed with replacements, committed Ardennes offensive, commanded regiment during Battle of the Bulge. His final report, written in POW camp after capture January 18, 1945, provides stark professional assessment. We were defeated by American artillery before we were defeated by American infantry or armor. Every movement we made was observed by their aircraft, when weather permitted, and engaged by their artillery within minutes. Every concentration of forces, staging area for attack, assembly area for defense, road march, supply convoy, was broken up by artillery fire before we could accomplish our mission. Every defensive position we established was located by their reconnaissance and smashed by artillery fire before their infantry assaulted. Their infantry rarely attacked positions that were still intact. They waited for artillery to destroy position first, then advance against ruins. We could not move without drawing fire, could not mass forces without drawing fire, could not defend positions without drawing fire. We simply absorbed artillery fire continuously until we ceased to exist as effective force. Our regiment began offensive December 16th with 2,240 men. By January 15th, we had 380 men remaining fit for duty. Artillery fire accounted for approximately 70% of our casualties. Direct combat with American infantry and armor accounted for perhaps 20%. Remaining 10% were non-battle casualties, frostbite, accidents, disease. American artillery killed more of my men than all other causes combined. This was not unusual. This was typical. Every German unit in Ardennes had similar casualty distribution. The offensive plan to drive through Antwerp and split Allied armies stalled after less than a week, broken primarily by American artillery. Mueller survived war, returned to Germany in 1946, taught military history at Bundeswehr Academy 1960s to 1970s, died 1989, Hamburg. His final report is preserved in U.S. Army Military History Institute and remains one of the most detailed German analyses of American artillery effectiveness. Obergefreiter Otto Schmidt, captured in Tunisia May 1943, held at POW camp, Huntsville, Texas, 1943 to 1945, wrote in letter that passed American censors, July 1944. I have been prisoner for over a year now. I have seen America. I have seen American industry with my own eyes. We take train rides occasionally, prisoners being transferred between camps or to work details. I have watched through train windows. I have seen what America produces. I have watched trains carrying artillery pieces, hundreds of them, brand new, still covered with protective grease, moving toward ports for shipment overseas. Entire trains, 50 cars, each car carrying howitzer or gun. I have seen factories producing shells by the thousands. We worked as labor details near ammunition plant, not inside plant, but nearby. We could see trucks leaving plant, carrying shells. Hundreds of trucks, dozens per day, all carrying ammunition. Where does it all go? To artillery batteries in Europe. Apparently, they have so much ammunition, they can afford to fire thousands of shells daily without concern. I have seen aircraft factories producing bombers. We could see them from our camp. Factory was perhaps 2 kilometers distant. Every day, multiple new aircraft rolled out of factory. Every day, not one per week. Multiple aircraft per day. Americans defeated us not through superior tactics or superior soldiers, though their tactics were good and their soldiers fought bravely. They defeated us through sheer industrial might. Industrial capacity we cannot match, could never match, no matter how long we fought. They could afford to fire 100 shells where we fired one. They could afford to lose tank and replace it within days. They could afford to equip every soldier with good boots, warm clothing, adequate food. They could afford to mechanize their entire army while we still relied on horses. We fought industrial war with pre-industrial methods. Outcome was inevitable from the start. I understand that now. Germany never had chance of winning this war. We were simply too poor, too weak industrially, to defeat enemy this rich, this strong. Schmidt's letter was intercepted, copied by American censors who monitored all PAL mail, filed in intelligence archives. Schmidt survived war, returned to Germany 1946, worked as translator for U.S. Army occupation forces, emigrated to United States 1952, died 1994, Houston, Texas. 4 German soldiers who faced American artillery system. Experience was transformative. They entered war believing in German superiority, superior training, superior tactics, superior soldiers, superior combat effectiveness. They ended war understanding that American industrial might had surpassed German capabilities by orders of magnitude. American organizational capability exceeded German methods. In every measurable way, they had learned to fear American artillery above all other weapons, for it represented the unbridgeable gap between German methods and American means, the gap between 19th century horse-drawn artillery and 20th century industrial warfare, the gap between artillery as supporting weapon and artillery as dominant force, the gap between ammunition scarcity and ammunition abundance, the gap between 8-minute response time and 3-minute response time, the gap between individual gun fire and time on target coordination, the gap between conventional fuses and proximity fuses, the gap that could not be closed by courage, skill, determination, or tactical excellence, the gap that decided the war. December 17th, 1944, 0640 hours. Obergefreiter Hans Mueller, frozen foxhole, writing final entry before being wounded by artillery. We are losing, not because we lack courage, not because we lack skill, not because we will not fight. We are losing because they have created weapon system we cannot counter. Artillery that arrives without warning, that kills without mercy, that never runs out of ammunition. We are losing because they are richer, stronger, more capable than we ever understood. The war is over. We simply have not stopped fighting yet.